Now we're going to be doing geometric series. Just as a reminder, series is a sum of the sequence. So if you determined all the terms in the sequence and then added those numbers up, that is the series. A series is the sum of the sequence. And remember, series is denoted with the Greek letter sigma, and sigma means sum of the sequence. The formula for geometric series is this: a sub 1 times 1 minus r to the n all over 1 minus r. Remember, a sub 1 is your first term, r is the common ratio or your common factor, n is the number of terms in your series. So, or in the sequence, the number of terms in your sequence. Remember to follow the rules of PEMDAS, order of operations. Do your exponents first, then do what's in parentheses first, and then multiply, and then do your division. So let's look at 27D9. So also a way to tell the difference between a geometric series and the arithmetic series. In a geometric series, your variable is in the exponent. That is one good tip to know it's a geometric series. Your variable, k, is going to go from -3 to a +3. That is in the exponent. If your variable is in the exponent, it is a geometric series, not arithmetic series. Okay, so instead of finding every term by substituting -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3 in per k, then we can just use the formula. So from our formula, we need to know n, which is the number of terms. We're going to go from -3 to +3. So if you thought about a number line, here's 0, 1, 2, 3. So from 1 to 3, there's 3 terms. From -1, -2, from -3 to 0 is 4 terms. So n equals 7. Be careful when you're counting these. Again, be sure and include 0 in there. So a sub 1. So a sub 1 is found by taking your first number and substituting in for k. Watch your signs. So you have -2, parentheses, those parentheses makes a huge difference, 1 minus k, and k, the first one is -3. So 1 minus a -3. Minus a negative becomes a positive. So that becomes -2 to the 4th power, -2, a negative to the 4th power will be a positive, because a negative times a negative times a negative times a negative is a positive, and 2 to the 4th is 16. So your first term is 16. Now we need to know the common ratio. How do you find the common ratio? You've got to know your second term as well, because your common ratio is A2 divided by A1. So we have to go through the same motions to find A2. So -2 raised to the 1 minus, next term after that would be -2. We're going from -3 all the way to +3. So that would be minus a 2. So that would be -2 raised to the 3rd power. Now we would have a negative number, because a negative times a negative times a negative is a negative, and 2 cubed is 8. So r is A2 divided by A1, which that is -8 divided by +16, which would reduce down to -1/2. So r is -1/2. Now we have everything we need to know to plug into the formula. Okay, here is the formula. The formula is a sub 1 times 1 minus r to the n, all divided by 1 minus r. A sub 1, we said that was 16, times 1 minus r is a -1/2 raised to the n, which was 7. I should put that in brackets. All over 1 minus -1/2. It's important to keep up with your negatives. Alright, let's go to the numerator. So exponents first. So I need to do my -1/2 raised to the 7th power first. So 16. 1 minus, and then a -1/2 to the 7th power will be a negative number. 1 to the 7th is 1. 2 to the 7th, 64 maybe. Oh, 128. I did that. So 128 all over minus a negative. In the denominator, that's going to be that. I have to make common denominators. I'll just come back to that step. That will end up being 1 plus 1/2. So in our numerator, work over this way. In our numerator, minusing a negative, that's going to be a positive. I have 1 plus 1 over 128. I've got to make common denominators. So I can change this 1 here into 128 over 128, because that denominator needs to be a 128. So now I've got adding these fractions together, adding the numerators, 128 plus 1 would be 129 over 128. That is still all multiplied by 16, because I had that 16 and I added these two fractions together. Down in my denominator, in the bottom, this also I need to make common denominator, so that can be 2 over 2. So this would be 3 over 2. So I'm going to see if this 16 and 128 will reduce. It does. So that can become a 1. This becomes a 8. So now I have 129 over 8 all over 3 over 2. I'm dividing fractions. How do you divide fractions? Multiply by the reciprocal. You flip the bottom one. So it'd be times 2 over 3. I know that will cancel and become 1, and that becomes a 4. And I don't think that 129 and 3, oh yeah, it does. So 3 will go into 129 43 times. So that became 43 over 4. And that would be the answer to the series for that one. Okay, now we're doing 20C number 11. So again, I know it's a geometric series, even if I'm not told that, because my variable is in the exponent. So again, that's a good tip to know it's a geometric series. Alright, so formula for that, a sub 1 times 1 minus r to the n all over 1 minus r. Okay, number of terms. I'm going from -3 to 2. 0, 1, 2. From there to there is, I just want to go from 1 to 2. From 1 to 2 is 2. -3 is 4. So my n would equal 6. 6 terms. I can create 6 terms. I've got to find my first term, a sub 1. Take your first number and substitute it in for k. So that would be 1/2 raised to the -3 plus 1. So that's 1/2. -3 plus 1 will be -2. Alright, so a reminder of what negative in the exponent means. To make the exponent positive, you have to switch the places of everything. So since I have a fraction, all I have to do is take the reciprocal. Move the 2 up, move the 1 down, and that becomes a positive exponent. The exponent doesn't change places, only the bases change places. So that becomes 2 over 1, or just 2 to the positive 2. The sign of my exponent changes when I change these places, which is 4. Okay, now I need my second term so I can find my common ratio. So second term, 1/2. My next number would be -2, so now I'm replacing -2 in for k. 1/2, -2 plus 1, so that'd be 1/2 to the -1. Same thing, to make your exponent positive, change the places of both. That would become 2 to the 1, which is just 2. Now to find my common ratio. R is your second term divided by the first term. My second term was 2 divided by first term, 4, which reduces to 1/2. Now I plug everything into my formula. My first term is 4 times 1 minus, my common ratio is my common ratio is 1/2. Raised to the n, my number of terms was 6. You can use parentheses if you want. Usually if I have a negative, I use parentheses. 1 minus my common ratio is 1/2. Okay, I'm going to do my exponents first. 4 times 1 minus 1/2 to the 6th power. That would be 1 over 64. All over 1 minus 1/2, making a common denominator. This would be 2 over 2. That would be 1/2, but everybody should know if you have a whole and you take off a half, you still have a half left. Okay, now up here in the numerator, this needs to be a common denominator, making that 64 over 64. So that would become 4 times 64 minus 1, 63 over 64, all over 1/2. This is like 4 over 1. This will reduce, that 4 becomes a 1, and I'm pretty sure that's 16. I'm going to double check myself. Yep. So now in the numerator I have 63 over 16 all over 1/2. A fraction divided by a fraction. Flip the second and multiply. So that becomes times 2 over 1. Reduce the 2 and the 16. And then you end up with 63 over 8. So just watch all your fractions on these geometric series. That would be the answer to this. You can also turn the 1/2s into decimals. Some of these you could turn into decimals and work with decimals instead of working with fractions.